Hey Prepper Recon fans, welcome to another edition of the PrepperRecon.com podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the globe so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. This episode is brought to you by CampingSurvival.com. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including bug-out bags, long-term storage food, water filters, gas masks, and first aid kits. Check them out online today at CampingSurvival.com. Be sure to enter coupon code PrepperRecon for a 5% discount on your entire order.
Times have never been so uncertain. Being prepared has never been so critical. Natural disasters, economic uncertainty. Be ready for whatever life throws at you. Come to the Life Changes Be Ready Preparedness and Gun Expo at the Lakeland Center, exit 31 off I-4, Saturday, November 2nd and Sunday, November 3rd. See the best in firearms products and hear from experts like YouTube Southern Prepper 1 David Kobler, best-selling author James Wesley Rawls, gun law attorney John Guttmacher, and many others. For details, visit lifechangesbeready.com.
Today's guest is Bernie Carr from ApartmentPrepper.com. Bernie, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. So what woke you up to the need to prepare?
I would say going through my first hurricane, which was Hurricane Ike, that was quite the hurricane that we experienced here in Houston. And the day before the hurricane, I said, well, I better go pick up a few things. And I was faced with these long lines around the gas stations, maybe a block or two long. And then the people with carts pushing and shoving, and there was really nothing left in the shelf. I just walked out of there with probably the last roll of toilet paper. So then I thought, oh, this is alarming. And then it got even worse after the hurricane, and the streets were flooded. So, of course, there were no trucks delivering food to the grocery stores. I thought, well, I'll just pick up a few items at the grocery store. And there was a line just to get in of people trying to go to the grocery store at the same time. And then when we finally got in, there was nothing in the shelf, no fresh foods, no, just a couple of canned goods, that nobody wanted. And that kind of hit me hard, where I just realized, boy, these grocery stores don't really stock anything in the back room like, we thought they would. But it's because then I kind of talked to the clerks, and they said, oh, no, we only stock about 1 or 2 days worth of food, especially if it goes on sale, then it's gone until the trucks deliver. And I said, well, what if the trucks don't deliver? And they said, well, then you're out of luck. You got to wait. So that made me realize, if there is some kind of disaster, everybody would just buy everything off the shelves, and there'd be nothing left. So that made me think I need to have a little bit more set aside than just, a couple days worth of food and water. And that kind of woke me up. I started reading everything I could about emergency preparedness, whatever was available at the time, this was maybe 2009, 2010. And I realized, well, there's a lot to be done. And I was, living in an apartment with not a lot of space. I thought, everybody that was writing about this was talking about, storing a lot of food and water and having a lot of storage space. And I thought, well, I have this little place, but I still need to prepare. So that's why I got started writing Apartment Prepper, because I figured if I was concerned about it, I'm sure there's a lot of people living in apartments or condos out there that are also just as concerned. And that's how we got started.
Awesome. And how long have you been writing the Apartment Prepper blog?
I started it April 2010. It was just a little WordPress site at the time. I just said, I didn't even know anybody would read it. And then pretty soon readership started growing because people started noticing it and also being concerned about the same things I was. So, it went from there.
And your book, The Prepper's Pocket Guide, has 101 easy things anyone can do to get their home ready for a disaster. Can you give us 4 or 5 tips from the book?
Oh, sure. I would say one of the more, what I advise people who are getting started, this book is really for beginner preppers who have never even thought about it, or maybe, people who are just getting started. I would say before you even do this, you should declutter your house and start looking for free space. And also look at what you already have. That way, you can make an inventory of items you already have, set that aside, and that kind of cuts down on when you having to buy new stuff. So I think the very first step is to get organized. The next tip, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, finish, please.
The second tip I would say is you also might want to investigate the water sources in your area, just in case of an emergency. I would, if you live in an apartment, a condo, or maybe even a subdivision, you'll want to take a look at, your water heater is a good source of water. That's clean water. Even the toilet tank, not where you flush, but the tank behind your toilet, that has clean water. And certainly a lot of people have pools or, jacuzzis. That would be a source of water for washing only. That's not drinkable. But anyway, investigate water sources around you. And in case of an emergency, you'd kind of know where to go right away. And then the third thing I would recommend is, and this doesn't cost anyone anything, write down your emergency contact list in somewhere you could find it. In case of an emergency, there might not be power. You might not be able to turn on your cell phone, because a lot of people store their contacts just in the cell phone. And if you have no cell phone, or even if your cell phone just gets discharged, you can't get a hold of anyone because you can't even find their phone numbers. So write those down somewhere, so that way you can still contact them, maybe with landline or another way, but at least you have a backup. I would also recommend always have a pair of comfortable shoes nearby wherever you are. A lot of people that work downtown, they might have some dress shoes on. And if there's some kind of an emergency and you have to walk out of the city, you're not going to be very comfortable walking around in your high heels or dress shoes, trying to get out of there. So I always recommend have some comfy shoes either in the trunk of your car or in your office or somewhere nearby where you can reach it. And I would say the last thing is also, in case you have to get out of the city, map out your emergency routes out of the area wherever you are. So have some maybe paper maps on hand, not just rely on your GPS. So you always have a way to get out of the city or get out of wherever you are in case of an emergency.
Oh, those are great tips. And you're working on a new book as well. It's called Jake and Miller's Big Adventure, a prepper's book for kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that and when we can expect it to come out?
Yes, this is a children's book. It's probably geared for children, maybe 4 and over. And it's not a traditional preparedness book. It's more something to introduce kids to the need to be prepared for whatever situation you might find yourself in. So it's more like an adventure book that the ultimate lesson we might want to impart is to be prepared but not scared. So, we're not going to see anything about disasters or any dangers. It's just, a little imaginary adventure that might show kids that it's fun to be prepared. And it's going to go out March 18, 2014.
Very cool. That's a great idea to get kids involved without freaking them out. That's awesome. And a lot of people don't prepare because they don't think they can afford it. You have another book, How to Prepare for Most Emergencies on $50 a month budget. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That actually it's an ebook, and it's a low cost. It focuses on low cost ways to prepare. So even if you have just $5 a week, you could set aside. You can do a little bit at a time. Every week, maybe pick up few cans of food, fresh fruit, not fresh fruit, but canned foods, canned vegetables, canned meats, whatever you can get with $5. Just start there and set that aside. And if you want to save water, you just use empty soda bottles, as long as you clean them. That wouldn't cost you anything. So these are very low cost ways to prepare for somebody who has a very tight budget. I have a section in there, even if somebody happens to be on food assistance or something, they can still set food. I mean, they can use coupons, they can use different kinds of money saving tips that can help them prepare no matter what.
And do you think it's important to live on a budget?
Oh, absolutely. I have a strict budget myself, so I should know. Because if you don't, your cash is going to go toward wants instead of needs, and you'll just find yourself, kind of splurging on stuff and finding that you didn't really spend on the things that you really needed. And maybe this also helps you set aside cash in case of an emergency. You definitely need a cash fund.
So you think you need an emergency fund? Do you think it's how many months worth of expenses should people have in their emergency fund?
Well, everyone's got to start somewhere. If you have nothing, I would say just set aside something until you have at least a month's worth of emergency money, and then try to next thing you do is aim for maybe 3 months worth of emergency money. And of course, you put this someplace safe. Either you have it in cash or you have it in a very safe, like a bank account, but something you have easy access to. So I would say whatever you can afford, at least have a month's worth to start, and then go from there. Go work to 3 months, 6 months, and hopefully before you know it, you have a year's worth.
And you mentioned coupons a little bit ago. My wife's a big couponer, and she has built our entire pantry on coupons, and she does all of our grocery shopping, all of our toilet paper and mouthwash and toothpaste, aspirin, all of that stuff for $50 a week, which for two people and a cat, I think it's phenomenal.
That's awesome.
I'm blown away. But yeah, coupons are great. Now, so do you use coupons personally?
Yes, I do. I get them either online or use the Sunday paper. Now, I'm probably not as great as your wife at it because, sometimes I don't like the coupons that are in the Sunday insert, but since I get them online as well. Yeah, that definitely helps the prepping budget, especially if you combine the coupons with the store sales, or maybe those, CVS or Walgreens. They always have those store flyers. So I try to combine the coupons with those coupons from the store and get even more bang for your buck.
Yeah, and CVS is great. If you've got one of those in your area, they have I think they're called Extra Care.
Yes.
ECBs. I know it's the acronym's ECB. It's Extra Care Bucks. That's what they are. And she's been rolling over the same $20 for a couple of years now. It shows on the bottom of your receipt how much you've saved for the year, and she's in the thousands for this year. Wow. For 2013. It's 1,000 something. But
that's awesome.
It's all free stuff from that same $20. She just keeps rolling over. And sometimes she has to get things that we won't use to be able to roll over the ECBs to keep them from expiring. But we'll just donate those to our church. Or, if it's vitamins or something like that, she's donated some things to a elder care facility nearby.
It sounds like she has an awesome system. I mean, mine don't go up to the thousands, but I'm happy to save a buck or two. And then if you spend enough, they also email you coupons to your regular email, and it's like $3 off, $5 off. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, everything helps. Every dollar you save is another dollar that you don't have to go out and earn.
Oh, and I like your idea of being able to donate too, because if you're not going to use it, and you are good, you can get deals for stuff you're not going to use it, but if you get it for free, why not donate it? That's a great idea.
Absolutely. So, do you think we're going to get a solution to this debt ceiling debate soon?
Oh my God, I'm hoping so. I'm just hoping and keeping my fingers crossed that there is some kind of resolution. But it's not looking good right now. And I was just reading last night that fears of a default, is already sending a lot of worries to our creditors and the banks and just the average people, because our system is based on faith and confidence. And if a default were to result from this, that could potentially send stocks crashing, interest rates going out of control, and value of the dollar going, plummeting. None of us want to see that happening, but from a prepper standpoint, this is definitely something to prepare for. By having supplies and stocks on hand and kind of preparing just in case something like that happens. This is definitely something that's worrisome to me.
Absolutely, because if they don't get some sort of and I think that we need to really just kind of gut the federal budget to get it to a sustainable level, just like I have to do in my finances. I have to live on what I make, and I think it'd be great to get a path to that. But you can't do it all in one big chop. And if we do it through a debt ceiling default, it's going to cut about 30% of the federal budget just overnight. And of course, I think that they would eventually come to some resolution, but in that period of time that they can't get a resolution, they're gonna have to figure out what they're gonna pay and what they're not gonna pay, and it might not be a debt default. They may make the payments on the debt, but something's not gonna get paid. Whether it's Social Security checks or it could be food stamps, and we've got so many folks that are dependent on that, and I think that our government's done a lot to get a lot of people dependent on it, and those people just won't know what to do because they've never had to fend for themselves.
No, that's true.
In Japan, they're worried about it because they're scared that if the dollar drops, it's going to raise the value of their currency. So they're scared of their currency going up.
Oh yeah, they don't want that to happen. No. Well, yeah, our creditors, which hold the China, Japan, Germany, they hold a lot of the U.S. debt, and so they're also kind of fearful that, we might not really default, but they're fearful of that. And I heard even that some of the banks are putting extra money in their ATMs just in case people start to panic and have to start withdrawing their monies. But of course, we're hoping that none of that happens.
Yeah, so we hope for the best and prepare for the worst, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And
also, I think some of the things that are worrisome too is if, like you said, they're still going to continue to pay what they can, but there are a lot of industries that are dependent upon, even the government workers that are not getting paid. So they're going to start having to cut back as well. So it's kind of a ripple effect. If, people aren't getting paid, if workers aren't getting some kind of paycheck, and other industries are dependent upon that, that causes a ripple effect, which is also worrisome to me.
It sure does. And you mentioned that they're stocking up with money in the ATMs. So do you think that's a good idea to keep a little bit of your emergency fund at home in case there is a run on the bank so that you have some cash?
I actually recommend keeping an emergency fund at home, even when nothing's going on, even when there's no threat of markets and economies into the economy. Because as a prudent practice, this happened to me a couple of years ago, where my accounts got hacked. So basically, it was an identity theft situation. Unfortunately, I had my accounts all in one bank. My credit cards were tied to the one bank, and my bank accounts and savings account were with this one bank. And they shut me down on the 4th of July weekend. So I found myself not having any access to funds. We were going to have a barbecue, and I didn't have any cash to buy the foods for the barbecue. But this is way years ago before I started prepping, and that taught me a lesson that you got to have cash just in case something like that happens. So even when there's no emergency, there's no threat of bank runs or any of that, you should have cash set aside at home, enough so you could at least buy gas and food until you get access back to your accounts. So yes, I definitely recommend having an emergency cash fund at home.
Oh, that's a great example of why people should keep cash at home. I guess they eventually get that worked out, but
they did.
But during the 6 months, or how long did it take you to get it all worked out?
Well, it takes a little while to get that all cleaned up, but I didn't have access to cash for at least a week.
Wow.
And it was scary. And so at that point in time, I was just said, oh, the lesson learned, I got to have some cash. Because a lot of even my coworkers, they don't carry cash at all. They live with the debit cards and the credit cards and all that. But even if you have like a power outage, I was at a store the other day where they had some kind of power outage, and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't ring you up right now. Come back later because our systems are down. But we're taking cash." So I said, "Oh, okay, cool. I have cash." And so that worked out. So it'll work to your advantage to have cash, no matter what happens.
Absolutely. And what are some of the unique challenges to prepping in an apartment?
I think the number one challenge is lack of space. Because you live in a smaller square footage, maybe not have as many bedrooms as the average home, you have to be more creative with the use of your space. I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible. There's actually lots of ways to store things in your apartment. But that is one of the challenges. Another challenge that I'm constantly dealing with is your apartment unit. Lots of people have access to it because they might have some maintenance people coming around every now and then. We've had apartment inspections twice a year. They also have security people checking the fire alarms, periodically. And I like to keep my preps private. That's nobody's business. So every time we get a flyer saying, there's going to be some kind of inspection, we have to kind of move things around to kind of hide the preps. So it is doable, but I think lack of privacy, besides the lack of storage space, is another challenge having to do with prepping in an apartment.
And what are some good solutions to storing extra food in a small space?
I would say, in our case, what we do is I can store non-perishable things out in the shelves in the garage. So maybe, your extra toilet paper, your winter blankets, comforters, things like that. As long as they're wrapped in bags, you can store those in the garage. But, like if you might want to use one of the closets instead of, like I said, you need to get organized first. Use one of the closets, even a hall closets that's not traditionally used for food items, can be used as storage for water and food. Also use the vertical space. If you're allowed to put shelving, you can use that vertical space for your prepping supplies. Another thing I've done is like under the dining room table, if you have a nice tablecloth that hides whatever is underneath the table, that's a lot of space you can store things in. So, I mean, it's there, but nobody really is looking under there. So that's another way. And also maybe the entertainment center, instead of having old CDs or old magazines stored there, maybe store canned foods and dehydrated foods or other supplies in there, in like an entertainment center, which has lots of little shelves in there. So those are some of the things we've done.
And we live in a house, but it's a small house, so we don't have a lot. And it's an older house when they used to, have the little 3 square foot closets too. So we've got those. And one of the things we did is we've put our bed up on concrete blocks so that it's a little bit higher up, but then it gives a little bit more clearance underneath the bed. And you could even probably put the bed instead of having a frame, you could probably use 5-gallon buckets that have a Mylar liner with 20 pounds of rice and 10 pounds of beans in each one, and you could probably have 4 of those as the post for your bed, and that could probably be some extra storage.
That's doable. Yeah, you could also put a little plywood. That way you could slide things in and out really easily. Even if you didn't raise it, you could still store things if you put plywood under there and put some of your stored items under there, so you could kind of keep sliding it in and out for easy access. So yeah, definitely under the bed is also a good spot.
And you can't store, and you wouldn't even really be able to run a generator or store the fuel in an apartment. What are some other energy sources that an apartment prepper can use?
I have propane for my emergency stoves, and those are pretty inexpensive. They're like $2 at Walmart, maybe even less. And so our emergency stoves are powered with propane. I agree. Most complexes do not even allow generators or fuel storage, or even barbecues. In our area, they don't allow barbecues out in the patio. Another thing I use I have several solar chargers that I rely on, and of course lots of batteries, of different sizes.
And what are some? You mentioned water back in the first part of the interview.
Right.
Are there any other water solutions you can think of for a survival situation for apartment preppers?
Well, the number one thing I do is I just collect soda bottles. I mean, we don't drink a lot of soda, but if whenever you go somewhere, people generally have soda bottles. And we just wash those, with a little bit of water and maybe a half teaspoon of bleach to disinfect them. And we fill those up. And we have a lot of those. They can also be frozen, as long as they're not completely full. So that way you always have ice. In an emergency, if you lose power, that keeps your freezer and refrigerator cold for quite a while. And also, we have some of the bottled waters, but some of those Sparklets bottles, I wouldn't recommend them for long-term storage. You'd have to rotate them because, I had one that I had stored for about 6 months and it exploded in my closet. So because they're not very sturdy, I don't recommend it. Also, right before an emergency, if you know that there's something happening, like a hurricane, you can fill up your tub. You could just kind of block it. As long as it's clean, you block that with a stopper. You can fill up your bathtub for extra water. And also, we have small rain barrels in the garage that we were able to fit in there that you can store additional water in there.
Yeah, that's a great tip on using the soda bottles. We use the old juice bottles.
Those are good too.
Yeah.
As long as they're food grade, and those food soda and juice bottles are all food grades. So we collect those as well.
And I used to use milk jugs, but I had that same problem with them. They didn't explode, but they leak because they're not very strong. And always try to put I try to put 8 drops of bleach per gallon of water, and I guess that's supposed to help keep it from getting stagnant.
Right.
And for my long-term storage water, it's not anything that I'm anticipating using in the next week or two. And I think that helps it keep a little bit longer. And probably another thing people could do if they're in an apartment complex, you said the pool water is good for washing and maybe flushing your toilet and things like that. But I guess if you had like a Catadine filter, you could probably use that water.
I don't know, because some of those chlorine, some of the chemicals they put in the pools are pretty strong. I think the only way to make pool water safe for drinking is to distill it. But I mean, I think they're starting to mass produce distillation products, but since I don't have that, I would stay away from drinking the pool water, because I don't think the Catadine or even the Big Berkey will get rid of everything, all the chemicals that get put in the pools. No, I would think not. But so I would stay with just using the pool water or the hot tub water for washing.
Cool. And when do you know it's time to bug out of the city?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot because I mean, it's possible. You hope it never happens, and of course, staying home is much easier than having to bug out. But I would say that if you had a loss of infrastructure where there is no water, no power, and you're not even to get the news and stuff. So, and you know that police and fire are either too busy elsewhere or they're not even responding to calls, I think that's a sign that you're going to have to leave. So I think the loss of infrastructure is definitely the main reason you'd want to bug out.
Good advice. Are there advantages to being an apartment prepper over living in a standalone house?
I think being an apartment prepper in the city does have a few advantages. One being, I know you pay the rent, but there's no separate property tax bill every year. So that's one advantage. And some utility bills are included in your rent. In our case, water is included. And of course, maintenance is accessible. So if something breaks down, all you got to do is call the maintenance department and they'll come and fix it. But that said, I tell my readers not to rely on that and still continue to have a few basic tools at home so that they can kind of fix a few things themselves. And I'm trying to get people away from being too reliant on others to do stuff for and try to do stuff for themselves. Because that, being more self-sufficient, is a better way to live, I think. But anyway, as far as being in the city, there's lots of available sources for supplies. You've got all, like you mentioned CVS later, there's about 2 or 3 within walking distance for me. You got the big box stores, dollar stores, ethnic grocery stores, and even farmers markets are all pretty close by for city dwellers. And also as close to public transportation and close to medical facilities. So those are advantages of, at least where we live, being apartment preppers living in the city.
And then I guess there's a little bit of an added sense of security because you're in a building with several other people that you know and have some sort of a relationship with just because you cohabitate close to them. And
you hope. Yeah, there a little bit. If you knew some of your neighbors, that definitely is a plus. And also, you have the apartment manager's office, the leasing office can sign for some of your deliveries, so you won't just be sitting out on the porch for anyone, especially if you're ordering stuff from your prepper stuff and your Amazon stuff. They'll sign for it, and it'll be there when you get home instead of being left out on the porch. So I think that's an advantage as well.
Oh yeah, and we get a lot of stuff from Amazon. I'm gonna have to get the UPS driver something for Christmas this year.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because we see him all the time.
Right.
And of course, we'll have links to your website and all of your books and today's show notes. But can you tell the folks who may be listening on Stitcher or iTunes where they can find you and where they can buy your book?
My book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and really all the other major bookstores. I've even seen it at the gun show, in the little bookshelves at the gun show. So yeah, it's available everywhere. And my website is apartmentprepper.com, and I post maybe 3-4 times a week. And if anybody wants to contact me, my email address is apartmentprepper@yahoo.com.
Bernie, thanks again so much for making time to come on the show today.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey Prepper Recon fans, I just published my new book, American Exit Strategy, Book 1 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles. Liberty-minded individuals who believe in the Constitution will find this near-future dystopian novel to be right up their alley. Those who are looking to be more informed about the potential threats to America's financial stability will learn what to watch for and how to prepare themselves for an economic collapse. In Book 1, America is on the cusp of financial annihilation. Matt and Karen Baer face the challenges of Main Street during a full-scale financial meltdown. Government borrowing and monetary creation have reached their limits. When funds are no longer available for government programs, widespread civil unrest erupts across the country. Matt and Karen are forced to move to a more remote location, and their level of preparedness is revealed as being much less adequate than they believed prior to the crisis. Meanwhile, Paul Randall, a third-party presidential candidate, arises to push back against the welfare and warfare spending that have bankrupted our country. While he's gained expansive acceptance across the country, the fight has just begun. Paul Randall proposes a plan to mitigate the coming hyperinflationary collapse, which is a mathematical certainty. His plan is known as the American Exit Strategy. American Exit Strategy uses survival fiction to take an in-depth look at the real-life politics and economics behind the issues that are likely to trigger a currency collapse or financial meltdown in the near future. American Exit Strategy is a work of fiction until it becomes history. Go to AmericanExitStrategy.com today to learn more or purchase your copy for Kindle in PDF format or paperback. Happy prepping.